When I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
Take my hat off.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Moss?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Done.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's a
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
Good morning. First name's Doni, last name's Glover. Entered the winner for the long haul, baby. Today, we have a very special guest. And you know, I really don't even need notes. I can tell you that when it comes to the digital divide here in America, here in the Western world, there is no greater champion, no greater person who is fighting against digital apartheid than Dr. Tyrone Taborn. I mean, in terms of putting in the work, not years, not a decade, but decades of work. Most recently, Dr. Taborn was in New York City and hosted an influential panel on the Metaverse. Of course, that's the future or the present future when it comes to the internet, when it comes to social media, when it comes to owning and controlling one's data. But anyway, he was hosting this panel with or at the National Action Network. They had one of their annual events in New York City and was hanging out once again with the likes of Keith Clinkscales and John King. So without further ado, let's bring up the good doctor and see what he was talking about. Good morning, Doc. How are you? Got to unmute yourself there. You got to unmute yourself, Doc. Hit that unmute button.
There we go. I thought I had hit unmute, but I'm here. Doni, thank you so much for having me on your show. This is one of the highlights anytime I have an opportunity to talk with you. But let me say something. That intro, I absolutely love that intro. That's a great introduction of who you are and what you've done and the richness and the contributions that you've made to our community. I think that you're like one of the invisible heroes that people who don't know, they don't know that you're one of those good troublemakers. And you keep pushing folks forward. And we need advocates like you. Hey, but listen, tell us about that song real quick. Who's singing that song?
Oh, it's a lady named Carmen.
Okay.
I did find it on YouTube. I didn't know. I used this software and it came with the software, but the lady's name is Carmen. Dare to be you.
There you go.
And that's what you have done. And you've also dared us as a community to be us. You know, I got to tell you, Doc, I'm just going to call a spade a spade. Everybody know LaRon Fetty puts on a nice event. Well, at least back when he used to do business events. You know, all of the stuff. And in my generation, he's pretty accomplished. in terms of dealing with large crowds. But I'll never forget when LaRon Finney met Dr. Taborn. And that's kind of how it was.
Yeah.
He and I both realized we were neophytes. I'll tell you another gentleman. There's another gentleman named, and he's gone, but Akneil Muldrow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Great man.
I went to one of Akneil Muldrow's event. Now, you know, at the time, I think I'm big stuff. I'm coming up, you know, other than Finney, and then he doesn't do events the way I do events. And so, you know, you're looking around at who's in the field. Akneil Muldrow could pack a house. Baltimore Marketing Association. And so all of that to say, LaRon and I get to stand on the shoulders, the broad shoulders of giants, and who aren't just local, who aren't just national. I still can't forget the time you told me you were hanging out with the Prime Minister of Jamaica. Come to realize he's just one of many prime ministers that you know, your wife being from Jamaica and all Jamaican roots, but enough with them.
Hey, but let me say this though about LaRon and about you. LaRon is absolutely he's on the right side of history all the time, and he has been instrumental in helping us bring the Black Engineer of the Year conference back to Baltimore for next year, as well as you. You've played a very important role. We have a 2-year contract to be back in Baltimore, bringing millions of dollars back here. So what I like to encourage you.
Should I be excited about 2 years?
Well, I'm gonna need everybody's help in the community to, just let the mayor and everyone else know we need to keep, since Bea's come back, let's keep Bea here. So just let your elected officials know, circle around us, and let's make sure that we're able to extend the contract. Black Engineer has to be in February. So we do have challenges in the future in Baltimore that I know we're going to work out in order to get the contracts and the space we need to go beyond the next 2 years. Anyway, we're working through that, and I'm optimistic that we're bringing Baltimore back, and this should be our home.
Doc, this is a no-brainer. I'm not understanding the fuzziness. I'm not getting this lack of transparency. I'm concerned. Should I be concerned?
No, you should not be concerned. But what I want to say is that you guys have all come together. We have the Baltimore 50 now that includes the mayor, the president of the city council. You played a key role in reaching out to the mayor to make sure he was behind here. So a lot of our major officials are all part of the Welcome Back Committee for the Black Engineer of the Year that started here in Baltimore. If you look at the Black Engineer of the Year conference and the significance over now, we're going to be going into 38 years coming up in 2024. And the impact that has made, I mean, more than 11,000 people attend in person, plus all of the individuals that are on the digital twin on the internet, the awareness we're bringing to our kids, opportunities for jobs, supporting our HBCUs. So it's time for us to come back home. And again, we're excited about that. And we're excited about how the community's embracing us.
Doc, let me reel this all the way back. You grew up. I want to go into some of your history. You were born in LA, raised in Chicago, but you grew up.
The reverse. Born in Chicago, raised in LA.
Born in Chicago, raised in LA, but your summers you spent at Greenwood, Archer, and Pine. You knew what Greenwood, Archer, and Pine was before the rest of us. And I'm talking about Gap.
Yeah.
As in the Gap band, as in you dropped a bomb on me. You were there. You grew up on Black Wall Street.
Yeah, I did. In Tulsa.
Blows my mind.
Yeah. It's I've had an unbelievable journey. and I've met some of the most incredible people. But Donnie, let me tell you, it's people like you and all of us who are storytellers, the journalists, the people who are recording history. We're needed more now than ever before. And as you look at the powers out there that are trying to eradicate the history of our people, and when you take away the history, our kids have nothing to look forward to because they don't know. I wrote a lot of my writings have to do with this thing called erasure of history, particularly as we, as people, our role in science, technology, engineering, and math. It was the freed people who were brought to this country and forced to work. We were the technologists of that time. We were the agricultural engineers that helped create rice and all of these other agricultural products that made America rich. We were the ones who built the barns and the houses. We designed that. Heck, we even designed Washington, D.C.
And the White House. Don't leave out the White House.
And the White House, and also Annapolis. Now, what would our young people who are out there now running around creating, looking at despair, how much difference would their life be if they knew they came from a generation, a history, a legacy of some of the smartest people ever on this planet?
Doc, I'm glad you said that. There's a line that a lot of youngsters have in their song. It says, I came from the bottom. I came from nothing to something. That's not true.
That is not true. Absolutely.
Who told us that? And it's because we aren't doing exactly what you're saying, telling our story better.
Hey, listen, we were, the history that exists, and that's why history is so important. If you're born to be proud, if you're born to know, I mean, we unfortunately are in a condition where we're oppressed, that we've been, at least in this country, enslaved, and in other countries colonized. That's a historical point, but that's not what makes who we are. Just because you've been victimized doesn't mean that you are a victim. You don't have to have victim mentality. We know we just have to move forward. And that's the future I'm talking about.
Who told you that? Where did you learn that? Because when I first met you, you knew I was thinking that, but you also knew beyond that. And you've never played victim. I've seen you living in the solution. But where did you learn? Where did you take on the mantra that you would not be a victim in all of this?
Oh, man, it was my grandmother. It was Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was me growing up in, Chicago when the riots started, and I looked outside right on Cottage Grove. No, we lived on 64th and Evans, and I looked outside, and there was the National Guard standing on our street in tanks, Donnie.
How old were you?
Oh, well, that was when Martin Luther King died, so was assassinated. So I must have been, 6, 7 years old. And I realized all of that time that we were a power. I remember a guy on a motorcycle coming down the street, blasting James Brown's song, "I'm Black and I'm Proud."
In Chicago?
In Chicago. I just remember these things. And, I think I'm a testament that you can come out of you can live in an oppressed society and still have some control over where you're going and what you're able to do. And it just struck me, Donnie, somewhere along the line. I don't know why or where, but it struck me along the line that we can either sit back and I could either sit back and look at all of the guys around me going to some of them, being killed, some of them just not doing anything. And I looked at some of the smartest people that I knew, and I just said, you can do better. You know, you don't have to let this environment in and of itself, do you in. And some conditions you can't get beyond. Some of them, the forces are just too great. But a lot of this stuff, or at least some of it, you do have control over. You absolutely do have some control over some of the choices that you make in life and where you're gonna go. So I come from a family of fighters, man. I've come from a family that they were the first owners of property in Carrier Mills, Illinois, as a black settlement they created up there in Carrier Mills in Southern Illinois. It's a historic piece right now. You can go back and Google it. Taborns and Carrier Mills, Illinois. They bought the land, they owned the land. Escaped slaves would get up. If you could get that far up into Illinois, escaped slaves joined and became part of this settlement. And the slave captures, those guys, they came up a couple of times and they found some very fierce people and they stopped going because they weren't getting out of that place alive.
Doc, we see that little nugget of history right there. I was somewhere and we were talking about enslaved Africans, and I was on a radio show, and the woman beside me had taken on the mindset that there was nothing we could do. And I tried to explain to her that wherever there was somebody trying to put a chain on somebody's neck, there was somebody fighting equally as hard, if not more ferociously, not to have that chain around that neck. We only get the picture. We only seem to absorb that some of us endured the worst, the brutal, the chains, the whips. But some of us fought back. Some of us fought back to the extent of freedom.
I don't want to say this and have people misinterpret it, but we can live in our misery, but we can also learn from our misery. And I will tell you that as slavery was absolutely horrible, no question about it. But I wonder to myself, did slavery also make this country in many ways what it is as far as a democracy? You had people who fiercely fought for their freedom, despite being whipped, killed, tortured, raped. That in that peace, they fought like heck. They threw babies off. They jumped into the water from the ships. So you had a fierce group of folks who continued to fight for their freedom. As part of that, did it inspire white Americans? Did Frederick Douglass inspire so many more to stand up for freedom and equality and rights? Did we become that moral consciousness of our country? And, you look at the elections now and you say the Black women are the consciousness of this nation and are turning things around. Because of that, were we the ones that became the moral conscious of this nation that helped this country embrace this whole experiment called democracy and what we're going through right now? Was it the Freddie Grays? Is it all of this attack on police, on our community right now that is continuing to bring in a multicultural group of folks who say this nation can be greater? This nation should be greater. Why are we going backwards? And that's why folks want to eradicate the history. Because if you can do that, if you don't tell the story of slavery and what happened and all of these other things, then multicultural folks, white people, everybody forgets what the battle is all about. And the battle will never stop, Donnie. It will never ever stop. We don't want it to stop because we can always be better than what we were yesterday.
Doc,
But
I need you to clarify. Are you the biggest Black publisher in North America?
I don't know, Donnie. I don't look at it that way, but I do think that I have a very significant audience among the science, engineering, technical, government, military, corporate America of like-minded people who want to change things, who want to make sure that even though they sit in the offices of power and they have positions, that they're simply not getting a job, but they're getting a job to do a job. Those are the kind of people that are part of the CCG, Career Communications Group family, the Black engineer family, the Hispanic engineer family, the women of color family. And that's why we're working so hard in these new emerging transformational technologies that are taking place. And we can talk a little bit about that. But I do want your audience to know, our audience to know, that is, that you have to look at history. You cannot forget history. The other thing is we cannot continue to define ourselves as victims because other people actually want us to be in a victim mentality. Because if you're in a victim mentality, you can't be in a growth mentality. You know, Donnie, the human mind works very, very interestingly.
Okay.
You can't have two thoughts at the same time. You cannot share two thoughts at the same time. So if you share a negative thought, there's no positive thought that can fit in. But if you put a positive thought in, a negative thought can't fit in. And it's a constant battle to push the negativity out to put the positivity in. So as long as they can keep us on radio shows and TV shows talking about, look what happened to me, look how horrible the situation is, and we're sitting back, complaining, we're not moving ahead being proactive. When the Republicans weren't in power, they were being proactive, writing plans, battle plans. They were ready to go. When the Democrats are out, they're doing the same thing. These things don't happen overnight. They have think tanks, everybody doing planning. But let me tell you something that's important about our community. Just let me lay this out. I think it's really important. The Civil War was won when they gave Black people guns. We weren't given our freedom. We fought for our freedom. I hear young kids walking around. I hear old people walking around. Lincoln freed the slaves. Listen, Lincoln was ready to cut a deal if he could have kept the Union where slavery would still be going on. Black slaves stood up. They were there. The second after the First World War. I mean, you look at the role that Blacks have played and fought in every major war in this country. The first Black man to die, the first person to die in the
Christmas addicts.
That's right, was Black in Boston. So once we know that we are responsible for ourselves, despite everything that was against us, including some of our own people selling us into slavery. But keep this in mind. The environment was created by people other than us. And if you stop and you think about it for a minute, I want to talk about the metaverse, but let me talk about it. What was so different about the brothers and sisters out there swinging drugs on the street corner now against folks who were selling us, who look like us, into slavery?
No difference. No difference.
It was the environment that was created. It was the world structure that was created, and people went into those areas because other folks have created it. That's why when you talk about structural racism and other things, you've got to really reform the structure if you want to get rid of the behavior. And so let's talk about what we're about to do now with these new emerging technologies, mainly areas like artificial intelligence, blockchain, the metaverse. These are things that will structurally go ahead, Donnie. I'm sorry.
You didn't mention this new term that would be new to our online conversation, Chat GPT. I just want you not to forget that.
That's artificial intelligence.
What is this new takeover? As no soon as this one thing, I'm just wrapping my brain around metaverse.
Right.
And then
right.
here comes this whole Chat GPT, AI, more people you gotta pay, more data I gotta own. I just want to get down to, when do I take this credit card and start buying and selling my data? That's what you said. I
told you that's going to happen. It's actually going to be a pocket wallet, a digital wallet that you will use like a passport to go through different metaverses, and that will connect you.
Metaverse?
Oh no! People will be creating open metaverses and closed metaverses. For example, if you go to STEMcityUSA.com, that's the metaverse that I've created along with the Black Engineer metaverse, along with the Women of Color metaverse. I am probably one of the only, at this point, one of, if not the only one of the few Blacks that have actually truly created a functional metaverse right now.
Well, you know, we're going to be doing a Black Wall Street, thanks to you, in Atlanta in 2 weeks. Yes. And I'm going to stop by and see that lady at Morehouse, and I'm going to put her on the phone with you. I promise you, I'm going to find her, and I'm going to put her. She's down there trying to do this metaverse.
I know who she is. I absolutely know. We tried to get her to attend MetaQuake. The schedules just didn't work out where you had your program at the conference in Washington, D.C.
Well, she better understand the recruiter's coming. And
okay, good. Good. And there's some other things we can do there. But all of this transformational technology is there. Now, as far as what you asked about chat, listen, think about it this way. The more data we create, that's not the problem. It's how do you interpret all of that data? It's so overwhelming. So artificial intelligence has been used. When you use your phone to talk to Siri, or when you have gone to Amazon, or when you have used software that will translate from English into Spanish, there has been artificial intelligence going on since the creation of the computer. It's always been there. It's always been there. No, it's absolutely always been there. This is just a more powerful system that is basically, if you think about it this way, artificial intelligence that you're talking about, that is called a model. And I'm going to break it down on how we're using it now. If you have all of this data and you put it into a fishbowl, right? You just take everything you have. So let's say we take everything that Donnie Glover has created over the years, all your videos, all your writings, everything that ever existed there. And we put all of that data into a fishbowl. Now, that would be too overwhelming for anybody to understand your whole life, right? But that's called a closed model. It's not connected to another model. It's just all of your data there. Now, artificial intelligence, if you ask artificial intelligence to answer a question, so let's say we said to artificial intelligence, Donnie, tell me about Africa. Now, that artificial intelligence will be able to go into that fishbowl and find anything and everything you've ever said about Africa. Every video, every picture, anything you said, things you don't even know you said on your show. And then it will come back and create a conversation, a coherent conversation based on that. Based on the Donnie Glover's worldview, it will come back and say, well, this is what Donnie has said. So it took all of that data. Now imagine that another fishbowl that is everything that was on the internet a year ago. That's where the chat comes in that you spoke about, right? They took a snapshot of what was on the internet, and all of that is dumped into a fishbowl. So when you go in and ask a question, tell me about, write me a business plan, for example. It's looking at every business plan that's ever been created that's online, and then it's able to kick back to you an outline on how you would put together your business plan.
Is it innately racist?
Well, technology is always, we're absolutely challenged. The technology, this technology in America is structurally racist because the people who are behind it are largely non-Black.
And that's what a part of your goal is?
That's a part of the goal of diversity. You know, these guys aren't even thinking about it. The keyboard, for example, you know, it's to the favor of men, you know, versus women, or versus people. Well, just because of the keys. Don't forget, when we were, you know, when I was in high school taking typing, you know, we all had to learn typing, right?
FJDKSLA7.
The keyboard doesn't quite resemble a typewriter. It resembles something where people never learned their keys. They never even learned the keyboard. You know, so when you look at people doing it, they're looking down and pecking, right? So most of the people who were learning typing back then, it was unusual for a man because typing was something for secretaries.
Not if you wanted to graduate out of Miss Knox class.
Right. You had to learn it. But let's take it a piece further. The technology that was created, the keyboard was not designed for a blind person. It wasn't designed for people who were impaired. Okay. So that's because many of those members of the community weren't there. So structurally, everything we have in society, structurally, if we say we have an institutional sexist society or an institutional racist society, technology is no different. But here's the better question, and this is what we're pushing. How do we use these new emerging technologies that are resetting the start line? Keep that in mind, because we're running a race in which we can't win based on this particular race that we're in. These emerging technologies are restarting the start line. So how do we now get there? And how are we on that starting line to take advantage of it? And I will tell you, these emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, like blockchain, like NFTs, these are an opportunity for us to truly get into the game and create wealth for ourselves and wealth for our community and take a significant amount of control back.
Doc, you brought in the help of others over the years. Now that Don Lemon is a free agent, is that someone on your radar screen? I'm just curious. I mean, you're at the table with most, is Obama on your radar screen? He's over there in Chi-Town. Who's not on your radar screen?
Well, I think that everybody out there understands the importance of closing the digital divide. So that's a good thing. John King, who was on the panel, was Obama's former Secretary of Education, and he joined us at the National Action Committee a couple of weeks ago, addressing a major issue, metaverse injustice. And hats off to Reverend Al Sharpton for allowing this panel to happen at such a national event and asking me to pull that panel together. I mean, I thought that was absolutely significant. I mean, he had the vice president there. He had Tyler Perry there, Kerry Washington there, all of the New York elected officials. I mean, it was a overwhelming parade of the powerful. And yet, both he and Senator Larry Young saw the vision to have me there and have me talk to the community about the metaverse and why it's so important and how we can participate. And that is absolutely exciting. I think, Donnie, the way we need you to help get the word out, which you've been doing. You've been leading that about STEM City and other places. So any place you can get to spread the word, it makes a big difference.
Doc, you wrote this book, Metaquake USA provides a comprehensive overview of the metaverse from its origins and current state to its potential future development. Taborn discusses the technological advancements that have paved the way for the metaverse, including augmented reality, virtual reality, and blockchain technology. What does this mean to the everyday person, Doc?
Well, if you walk away from the book, if you read the book, the first takeaway from it is that stop calling yourself a victim. That's the first thing. What it said, what the whole history of this book is to show you how we got where we are from a technological point, and how we were dealing with other major pieces, Donnie, like civil rights, public accommodations, when a lot of these transformational pieces of technology happen. The second thing you take away from the book is that there was always somebody who looked like us involved in the development of this technology along the way. So we've been good stewards. We've contributed a lot to a lot of this stuff, but we haven't necessarily gotten the recognition. Invisible figures, for example, Mark Dean, people like that. We haven't always gotten that recognition. And the takeaway from the book, the major takeaway from the book is that we lay out a plan on how you can engage in the areas in which you can engage in this emerging technology. Now, I did see something that came across where a few minutes ago in the chat, and I think it was from somebody in Florida who said AI will take away jobs. Let me say this, I think that's important. The smarter we become, the more time we have to use in learning a piece, and we can spend more time in creativity, the world knowledge increases for us to spend time on more important things. So if you have, and I know you do this all the time, if you have a researcher that can go out, you have a thought, you want to write your book, obviously you're going to have a researcher out there fact checking and everything else, right? That means you can spend more time in structuring your book, structuring the content, structuring the creativity, and you don't have to run out and do that.
How'd you know I was working on a book? How'd you know
right,
this?
Right, because you never stop. So if you can do that kind of stuff, and you've got a tool like spell check, and you don't have to run back and do that, that was artificial intelligence. Did that make you weaker, or did that mean you were more creative? So here's the key about Chat GPT and all of the other AIs. There's a lot of stuff out there that people don't even realize they've been using for years. We spend more time, or we used to spend 70% of our time learning the tools like COBOL programming tools, things like that. We would spend 70% of our time learning the tools and 30% of our time actually being creative. Then along came object-based programming and people don't know the original programming, because the programs now we have will do a lot of that work. As a result of that, we spend 70% of our time on creativity and only 30% of our time learning the tools. So we now have more products, more apps, a whole bunch of things that we can do that we would not have been able to do before. I believe that all of this stuff, like artificial, all of these tools are just going to bring up the knowledge curve. It's going to allow us to concentrate on the things that are important, and we're going to get away from the things that that really took up a lot of our time. Your productivity, you will be more dangerous, Donnie, because your productivity, in many cases, you will be able to do 5 times as much as you're able to do now. And by the way, something popped up about Web3. Those are things like, that is the new metaverse. All of these things, industrial the industrial internet, all of these things that are coming. And think about this, for the tech people out there. What is blockchain really? It is really the future web, because the internet was not created to be secure. What we are working on, what has turned into a major commercial product, and what has really fueled the telecommunications platform throughout the world, was not built to be secure. It was built for government and academic agencies as an experiment to be able to collaborate with one another. Then the browser came on and a number of other things that made it more consumer, allowed the consumers to accept it and companies to accept it. But we live on a very insecure platform. All of these new things like blockchain are all being created in order to protect the data and bring us a secure way of communicating. That's one of the major driving forces there.
Doc, I also wanted to ask you about InTouch. You have created a new social networking platform. Can you talk a bit about that?
I would love that. Here's another case of not us being victims, right? We're running around, folks are running around looking at things like Twitter. And if you go to InTouch, by the way, it's free. It's at mystemcity.com. It is very much a social media sharing campaign. Platform. It's close. It's almost like a Twitter, right? And I don't want to say that because I don't want to get in legal trouble. But basically, we went out and said, if our community is spending a lot of time on these social sharing platforms that we say don't treat us fairly, we went out and created one.
So Doc, you're getting to something that I really want to ask you about. You can't do any surfing on anybody's corporate website without this question coming up before you get started. Do you accept these cookies? God doggone it, it's on everything from the tennis shoe store to the real estate firm to the Georgetown University, all the way to Oxford. Everybody, do you accept these cookies? Do we accept these cookies or not?
Well, it depends on how much you trust where you are.
I don't trust none of them.
Well, let me just break this down. First of all, that is really the issue. There is really a European-based issue. Just so you know, in the United States, you really don't have to get that because we haven't passed any regulations like over in Europe that forces that question about accepting cookies. I generally say no to accepting cookies, right? Because basically what those cookies are things that are dropped in the history of your browser. So when a company like Amazon, when you go to Amazon, it's checking your browser to see what you like in order to serve up information for you like a product. So if you've accepted a bunch of cookies from other places, that's sitting around in your browser, in your computer memory. And when you go to these other places, they're reading your cookies.
Is that why they're always trying to sell me racehorses? They saw me looking up the cost of a thoroughbred.
That's exactly right. Sometimes
everywhere I go, a thoroughbred horse.
That's exactly what they are. The smart thing to do is just clean your browser. Every single time that you close down, before you close down your browser, go into your browser, go to history, and then hit clean browser and clean out your whole history and everything if you want to avoid those kind of issues. You can also go directly to some place like Google online and delete everything that you've ever done or as much as you've done directly on the Google servers. So we should do a whole thing about privacy and how we can protect privacy.
What is privacy?
Well, privacy is where you've been surfing. So yeah, I mean, you heard the story all the time. Like this guy was recently caught. He poisoned his wife, and they asked, how did that happen? They said, well, we went to his Google searches, and they found he was searching for what kind of poison to kill my wife, right? And then that's because they haven't deleted their history from the Google server itself. They may have deleted it from their personal computer, but they haven't gone online where the information is also being stored. So everything you do on these platforms is captured. Now, it may not be identified with you personally. It may not be
close enough for the FBI to say it was probably you. Okay, so look, Doc.
All right. It's just not the FBI, by the way. You know, again, I would. Hey, listen, it can be your employer.
What about China? Everybody's on their phone with this TikTok thing. Doc, in '97, I was writing about China. I tried to tell these Westerners that China's just getting Hong Kong back after 150 years of the Opium Wars. And the West was saying, oh, China's going to mess up Hong Kong. Well, God doggone, China owns everything now. Are we in trouble?
No. Donnie, you know, that's like three-card motley. You know, have us look at something else where we really need to be looking at what's important for us. You know, they've got us worried about China when, in fact, what about the privacy of a woman having control over her own body here?
In America, abortion, yes.
Right. What you know, those are the issues. What about why, you know, China, they've got us worried about TikTok when, in fact, they're taking out courses on diversity and history of our people, not only in Florida, and this has been going on a long time, but subtly in other states as well. You know, if you let it go, we won't even have a Black History Month. You remember Black History Month started as Black History Week, right? So all of these things that we see, I mean, that are incredible. So what I'm saying to you is that the data that you can be worried about that, but we've got real serious issues about privacy right here in the United States of America that we can concentrate on, and we should, and they're a far bigger threat. Let me give you another threat, just so you think about how willing we are to give away information, and we're talking about TikTok. You know, if you go to Walt Disney or any of these other amusement parks, right, people go there, you willingly give up your fingerprint. Think about that. They will ask you for your fingerprint so you can get in and out. And if you don't do it, then you have to go to the guest relations and show your ID because you refuse to do that. Now, you've just given up your fingerprint. Now, that fingerprint you willingly gave to Walt Disney or to whatever venue. I'm not picking on Disney. I just know because I had that experience and I refused to give them my fingerprint. I said, nope, I'm not going to give it to you. Not to go into an amusement park. You must be joking. Now, you know, TSA or Clear, you know, all my data is in all of the government pieces because I'm in the Department of Defense. I'm meeting people there. I have no problem in giving up my data where I see fit. But to Disneyland, no question. Think about this for a second, Donnie. You've given up your fingerprint to Disney. Now they sell that data. They sell that data commercially on the commercial level. In the United States, any law enforcement agency can buy commercial data. So they can buy all of those fingerprints
and add them into the national database.
I don't know if they're going to add them. I'm just telling you, it's legal for them to buy that. It's okay for them to sell commercial data, right? Now, you worried about TikTok, they can buy that data too.
Well, my concern about TikTok is TikTok is owned by China and TikTok is on half of Americans' phones, and we would dare think about what would happen in a war between China and the U.S. Well, hell, they've got satellites everywhere.
It would be more subtle. The real issue would be more subtle. The same thing that Twitter and Facebook have been accused of doing. What TikTok would be able to do is simply have these subtle things that impact the opinion of folks. So, for example, the exact reason Donald Trump was able to win using social media, that's what TikTok would be. That's the biggest danger. So yeah, you can take out TikTok, but until you regulate all of these other systems, they're still doing the same thing that you're afraid of. Not that you personally are afraid of, but they are. So for example, TikTok can start pushing propaganda that says, there's a race war coming, or America doesn't believe in democracy anymore, and subtly drop that information all the time, and that makes an influence there. Or it can use this platform to say Joe Biden is too old, or doing what happened on Facebook. We need a woman, but she's not the woman at this time, right? These were all little things that impacted the vote. That's what TikTok can do. All right, so get rid of TikTok because they're on all of these platforms. Get rid of them. You still have Twitter. You still have Facebook. You still have these other things that are doing exactly the same thing. So until we get control over all social media and have some kind of regulations, whatever those regulations might be, then it's just shooting one baby, right? When you got 100 of them ready to step in. It's like taking one guy off the corner when somebody else is going to get right back in that corner. So it is the wrong argument in my mind. It's making you look at something that is not going to make a significant change. It'll make a dent, but it's not going to make a significant change. And that's why I've created with my team a social platform, which is mystemcity.com. You type that in, you'll go to something called In Touch. I'm going to make that available, Donnie. Listen to me. Everybody who says that there's a problem with Twitter, every organization, fraternities, shows like yours, I'm going to give that to you. And you will have Donnie Glover's intouch.com. And it will be a closed account where only your folks can come in that you want. And you will build your own community. So rather than you bringing all your buddies over to Facebook and Twitter, bring them into your own environment. And I'm going to...
I got to get this in because
we're
running out of time. I have to mention a huge loss. Harry Belafonte.
Absolutely.
A lot of people, especially today, the younger folk, don't know the impact he made. But when I look at your work, and I'm not saying I'm not at all putting you there with Harry Belafonte.
Well, thank you, because I'm no way close.
But when I think of his level of service, he said he was an activist first. Everybody, thinks he was an entertainer. And so I know you're, this brilliant engineer, but you are an activist trying to close the digital divide. You are an activist fighting against digital apartheid. Harry Belafonte.
Donnie, let me say, first of all, what a not only him, but Sidney Poitier and others, that were there when they were told, just shut up and sing, or just shut up and play. As if you can leave everything in your history and in your culture and what you've seen behind, in order for a paycheck. But I'm going to tell you something that really touched me about Harry Belafonte, that I saw a picture. I saw him leaning in next to Dr. Martin Luther King. And it struck me, and I think you will know this and you will feel this. You know, those of us who are out there balancing, trying for social justice and not blaming other people, but trying to bring all of our brothers to a level of enlightenment. And there's a lot of them that are, a lot of people want to do the right thing. A lot of people, you know, they don't know how to fight against the institutions or anything else. But the point is, you know, many of us have a lot of friends who are from the left to the right. They're there. You know, there's some of the best people. You say that person is crazy with their thinking, but if you were in trouble, they're the first one there. But you sit there, and when you bring up these issues, you become under attack, Donnie, right? What struck me about Harry Belafonte is, as he was leaning over to Martin Luther King, I said to myself, he was there when all of the stuff that Dr. King had to go through. He had somebody he can turn to. He had somebody he can trust. In those moments of absolute darkness, when your friends turned against you, when people said you were crazy, when folks attacked Dr. King. Don't forget, he wasn't at the top of his popularity when he was assassinated. That he was able to lean over, to have Harry Belafonte lean over and say, I'm there for you, buddy. I'm there for you, my friend. That's what struck me. And that's what strikes me about this trusted community that I have been lucky to be part of and they hope create. For many of our friends out there of all, from the different genders, from different races, from different cultures, who've been able to lean into CCG at those moments of darkness, at that moment of isolation, they know that they can come to what we've created, these conferences, these magazines, and now in these new social networks, and lean in and say, listen, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. And I have a way of contributing. You need it. I need it. And that's what Harry Belafonte did for so many people, that they could turn around, and a guy at his level, I mean, imagine that. It's just not just your buddy, but it's a person that you admire. Dr. King could look at him. He didn't necessarily just see Harry Belafonte. I'm guessing. I don't know, because I didn't know Dr. Martin Luther King. But I would suspect that he could lean toward a person of that kind of high visibility and say, wow, he's on my side. It's like final thing, it's like the way I can lean toward you, or I can go to Frank Ski, who will say, hey, listen, Ty, I'm gonna put your stuff on the radio show. I'm gonna push it. You're gonna push things in your social media. I gotta ask
you,
there is enough.
The Shirley Nathan Pulliam.
Oh my God!
Same category.
She is absolutely in that same category. You know, more people come to Shirley outside of the district than they're inside the district. And Shirley is always helping every single person that comes to her. And there's so many more that we can talk about, but Shirley is like my mother, and she's absolutely, she's dedicated her career to being that person that gives you cover, that says, you're not crazy, Donnie. What you're doing is right. Keep on going. Keep on doing what you're doing. You may not know the impact you have today, but you're planting them seeds, man. And folks will say, if Donnie can do it, or if Tyrone can do it, or if Shirley is doing it, I can do it. I certainly can do something.
Doc, you are right there on Pratt Street. You've been there 30 years, right here in the middle of Baltimore. And too many people don't even know. When I meet people and they're supposed to be well accomplished, you know, incredible resumes, I ask them, do they know about Career Communications Group, about Black Engineer Magazine, Hispanic Engineer Magazine, Black Engineer of the Year Awards, Women of Technology? And too many people I meet do not know.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the society of media, because what we do, you know, there's no reason to tell a good story about people of color, right? I mean, again, I told you we want to be held in a statehood of being victims. We want to be held in a statehood of feeling that we're exceptions rather than we are the continuation of people of success, right? As long as you think poorly about you, you can never really go forward and help anybody else. As long as you hate you, you can't love people who look like you, Donnie. And we don't even know how much popular culture has made us hate ourselves. But we do. We've got a serious mental problem in our community, and we don't even know it, and it's shaped by popular culture. That's why everybody doesn't know about Black engineer or Hispanic engineer, because we're telling the positive, and we're saying this is what's possible. This is what we can do. This is how we can change society for everybody. Not just if we do well, America does well. You follow me? I mean, this is not just about us. As long as we're doing poorly, our nation's going to do poorly.
But doesn't
everybody doesn't want to know that story, man? Popular culture doesn't want the institutional part. Doesn't want you to know that piece, because greedy people, and it may only be a handful, but greedy people need, in order to enjoy greed and enjoy wealth, they need to keep everybody else down.
I'm so glad that while we're only 13% of the population, we've had the impact of 80% of the population because of people like you.
I'll take your numbers. If you put that out there, I'll take your numbers.
See, they want us to think that we're filling up the prisons, but I'm telling you, we're filling up the world. And as you said, we are the moral conscience, not just of America, but the entire world, especially when we stay on point.
Absolutely, Donnie. And you keep on doing what you're doing, man. I mean, you make a difference.
And thank you for the Emmy nomination. Keep watching. Well, Good Morning World. Almost messed up the XO. The outro. Thank you, Doc. Good Morning World.
Bye-bye.